Right, we're going to change yarns to the pesto. So just as we've done before, I've left the last stage of that treble undone, and I'm just going to pull through. We're still working with the silver as well, so we need to keep that attached. So just separate out that green ice for now, and I will put both yarns over my hook and pull through. And hey presto, we've now changed. Oh, hey presto, we've now changed to pesto. Marvellous. It's made me happy this morning. Right, sorry, where's that gone? So we don't need green ice anymore, so I'm going to just snip that and get it out of the way. Right, so front post and back post trebles in this section, and I think in Eleonora's pattern she's referred to them as raised trebles, raised treble fronts and raised treble backs, probably the correct terminology. I know them as front and back post trebles, but the stitch themselves are exactly the same. So let's refer to them in the correct way that the pattern refers to them, which is the raised trebles. And if you haven't done them before, they're super easy. It's just a treble, and the thing that makes it raised is where you put your hook. So that's encouraging, isn't it? If you've got this far, you can do a treble. I know that for a fact. Right, okay, so we are now on row 5 of tail fin, and we're going to start with 3 chain, and as you know, that's going to count as our first treble. Okay, right, 2 treble in the base, in the stitch at the base of that chain. This is kind of where our increase is going to happen each row. It's going to fan out at this edge here. So at the beginning, if you're asked to make, I think you'll always be asked to make the 2 or 3 trebles at the base of that chain. That's where it's going. Okay, so 3 in there. Seem to have, that's better. Seem to have got in a bit of a pickle with the silver there briefly. Right, okay, here comes our first raised treble, and it's a raised treble front, and you'll either see an RTF, raised treble front, or an RTB, raised treble back. And that's helpful because the F or the B, front or the back, just tells you where your hook starts. Does it start in the front of the work, or does it start at the back of the work? So you don't have to keep looking it up if you think of it like that, which is fairly handy if you're someone like me who can't hold anything in their head. Right, so I'm going to get ready to make a treble, which means I've put the yarn around my hook, and I am going to do a raised treble front, which means my hook starts at the front of the work. Now normally my hook would go through that stitch at the top there. We're all familiar with that, that's absolutely fine. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put it around the post of the work rather than at the top of the work. And because it's a raised treble front, my hook starts at the front, which means it goes from the front to the back around that treble, and then it's got to come out again, so it's going to come back from the back to the front. So you can see that treble stitch is sitting over the top of my hook. Now I have used the first stitch, that edge stitch I've used, let me take this out and show you again. The edge turquoise stitch, not turquoise, the edge green ice stitch I've used already to create my first sort of little cluster up here. So I can't go around that one. It's the next one in that I'm going around. Just remember that when you start, because that will, that is important. Okay, so let's get on with it. Yarn is around the hook. It's a raised treble front, so my hook starts at the front. It goes from the front to the back to the right side of that post, treble post, and then it comes out again, so you can see the post of the treble sitting over the top. And I then just complete the treble in the normal way. Okay, now with these stitches you can already see it's kind of pulling this forward, but with these stitches they're often used to make ribs, and the real full texture of them you kind of get as you build. So as you do 2 or 3 more rows, you're really going to start to see the impact that doing these stitches has had. Right, okay, raised treble back now then. So we put our yarn around the hook, ready to do a treble just as before, and because it's a raised treble back, we know that our hook starts at the back of the work. Now if I turn it slightly, I need to be able to show you really, and also see, which is very tricky. Our raised front treble, you can see it's coming out here. You can just see, can't you, that leg of the stitch coming up there. On the back, I need my hook, you can hardly see it, but I need my hook to go into the same place where it came out before, so I can go around the next bar of the treble. It's going to be a lot easier for you because you're going to be able to put it right up to your face and have a look. I've got the cumbersome tripod and all sorts in the way. So I'm going to start with my hook at the back, and I'm going to bring it through between those 2 stitches because I want to go over the top of this next post along, if you can see. And I'm now going to put my hook through to the back again. And if you look at the back of the work, you can see the post going over the top of the hook, but from the back this time rather than the front. So on the front, all you can see is a little glint of the hook there. Okay, and then again, complete the treble in the same way. Now this is fiddly to start with until you kind of get your rhythm and get used to it, but once you do get used to it, you'll fly along there. Okay, so there's your raised treble front, there's your raised treble back, and you can see they're sort of like, well, they're just in different positions, aren't they? One's raised up to the front, one's raised up to the back. We're going to alternate along this fin. So we've done one raised treble back. We're now going to do another raised treble front. So starting at the front of the work, going around the post. And if you look at your pattern, the repeat is a back, raised treble back, and then a raised treble front. So what we've just, ignore that first one, what we've just done there is one repeat, okay? And Eleanor has asked us to do that twice. So I'm going to do exactly the same again. So a back raised treble, just let some yarn out. Back raised treble, so starting at the back, bringing the hook around the post, trying not to pick up anything else. You can see that's just going over the top of the hook there. Bring it through and complete. So there's the raised treble back. One more raised treble front around that one. Okay, so that's the repeat finished, and if I look at the front, I've got 3 raised trebles at the front, 2 raised trebles at the back. And as I said, as we work more rows on this, it is going to be much easier to see those because it will carry up and give that sort of nice ribbed sort of fin effect, which is lovely. Okay, what I've now got to do is just some normal regular stitches, and I found when I made this that I got myself in a little bit of a pickle here because of having to kind of work out where stitches go. We're going to repeat that pattern that we had on the last row, which is kind of reducing the stitch sizes down. If you're not sure where to place your hook for this next stitch, because we're going to go treble, half treble, double, slip stitch, then I would suggest kind of working from the slip stitch and working backwards. That is my advice. So I think that there is my slip stitch, which means that there is my double. That is my half treble. And oh, how exciting, my next stitch along is a treble. So just a little aid memoir, that's not it at all, is it? Just a guide really as to where you need to be putting those stitches if you get into a bit of a pickle. So that's my treble. Got some stuffing. Half treble. Double. Now just be careful here because the slip stitch is so tiny you can miss it, so that's why I sort of recommend, sorry, I just let that person go to work. That's why I recommend starting and having a good look for it and working from the middle outwards, because you can easily miss it, and then it obviously messes up your stitch count on the other side. So there's my tiny slip stitch right in the middle. Okay, and now we're ready to reverse it and go up the other side. So let's do that. So from the center out then, we've done our slip stitch. We're going to do a double crochet, half treble crochet, treble. Really need to get some more yarn out. There we go. Half treble. Here's a regular treble, and now the fun starts, because we're going to start on those raised treble fronts and raised treble backs, just as we did here, but we're going to sort of reverse it this time. We're going to finish with a raised treble front, and then our repeat will go from the next one along. So let's get going. Again, if you want to count, so you know which post to start around, that's absolutely fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. We're always going to have this end one free. We're not going to work a raised post treble around that one at all. So if you look, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to have 5 raised trebles in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can count my posts, so I know where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with this one here. This is my first post that I'm going to work round. So the first post that I'm going to work round is this one, and it's going to be a raised treble front. And raised treble front, you know, means I start with my hook at the front. So around that post we go, pick up the yarn and just complete my treble in the same way. Don't worry if you have to go back and unpick this a couple of times until you get your eye in. We've all done it. I've done it many times on the first side, so it's really not a problem. You will get there. We know we're going to alternate, so I put my yarn around my hook, and I'm now going to do a raised treble back, which means I start with my hook at the back. It goes through, and then I pull my yarn through and just complete the treble in the same way. So I'm guessing you've kind of got the hang of this now. Yarn round the next one, starting at the front. And the next one starting at the back. Keep your eye on these posts. Keep your eye on the numbers that you should have, because it is easy, particularly if you're working perhaps in the evenings. I know a lot of us, after the day's done, this is what we do of an evening. If the light isn't so good, these little posts can stick together a bit. So if you're scratching your head about not having enough posts left, just have a good old look under a decent light. Sometimes you will see that you've done 2 at once or something, and that's very common. Right, so my last stitch is my last raised treble is a raised treble front. And that seems right to me, because if I just stop there, I can see I've got 1, 2, 3 raised treble fronts here, which is the same on this side, because obviously we don't want a lopsided tail. And if I look on the back, I've got 2 raised treble backs, which is exactly the same as I've got over the other side. So all good so far, people, all good so far. To finish this row, I'm going to work 3 treble in that very last stitch. Well, in fact, it's in the top of the beginning chain, but 3 treble. Do you remember right at the beginning of this, I told you that that's how we're going to be increasing our stitch count and giving it that kind of fanned out look. It's by doing these 3 stitches, 3 or 4 stitches. I think there might be a 4 in there at some point, at the very edge of the tail. 1, 2, and whoops, 3. And we're not changing colour for this row, so that's nice. We can carry straight on. Let's have a little look. You You can see that tail growing, can't you? Now, it doesn't look much at the moment, but you wait. When we build on this, it's going to really, really look nice. What I'd like to do is I'd like to do another row, at least. We'll see how we go at the end of it, just so you can see how to build on these stitches. And then I think you'll have everything you need to be able to complete this tail thing. So let's move on to row 6.